So I'm going to present two projects that I have been doing with Örnsköldsviks. Since they have the same framework, I introduce the framework of both projects. So they are both intended to be placed under this umbrella, this big umbrella that is called evidence-based policy and practice, specifically in crime prevention. So what do we understand by evidence-based, this kind of thing of evidence-based policy and practice, is when decisions are made in base of the information systematically collected and systematically analyzed. And interventions and the policies are rationally designed, and by this I mean with the best knowledge that we have, with updated knowledge, we design interventions looking at what we know about theoretical risk factors, etc., on the problems that on the crime problems that we are trying to fight against. Why do we do this, or why we should do this? Better, perhaps, more accurate words, because everyone should argument, right? Should have an argument, a rational argument, why we decide to implement this intervention instead of implement this other intervention. Perhaps we can say that, well, look, both of them are successful. One is a bit more successful than the other, but the other is much more efficient because it's less cost money. So this should be the knowledge that we should have in order to make decisions, rational decisions, when we decide what we do in terms of crime prevention or in terms of anything when we work evidence-based. Evidence-based is a problem-solving type of approach. So what we are is to solve problems, right? We find solutions for problems. In our case, it's a crime problem. In order to find solutions for crime problems, we have first to understand clearly what is the problem that we are working with. So the first step is to make a clear picture of what the situation is. We call it situation analysis. We also call it needs assessment, whatever. The first project that we are going to present is exactly in this step of what is called translational sequencing, that is a natural way of working on prevention, when we work on prevention. So when we have clear what the problem is, then we establish objectives, things that we want to achieve in order to fight against that problem, and we develop or we propose solutions. These solutions are in general activities, are interventions, are programs that we design in order to achieve that specific objective. So the activities that we design should be aligned with that objectives, which is important. In general, it will be good if the solutions are several, so we can choose between solutions, but in the process of developing a solution, we go through cycles of proposed activities, proposed programs, evaluate if works at an experimental level, at a trial level. So we experiment, we evaluate, we experiment, we evaluate, until the moment that we come up with a good solution and say, okay, this really can work. In that moment, so we write what should be the instructions booklet, as I like to call it, and all that program, all that activities should be very well thought, very well grounded in what is theoretical knowledge, in what is the research, the evidence base that we have from previous research, etc. So when we have this thing that we say, okay, this really can work in order to, for example, prevent our kids to start committing crime, start taking drugs, etc., then we implement it at a populational level. And of course, then we evaluate. Each time that we apply something, each time that we implement some kind of solution, we need to evaluate. We cannot go without evaluating, without knowing the results of what we are implementing, that in this moment, at least in crime prevention, is still very much what is happening. We do not evaluate so much. There is effort from the government, from the municipalities, from everyone, from public administration in general, to evaluate everything that we do. And we are here in this. The second project I will present for you is specifically the design of an evaluation process to evaluate, or the design or the proposal of an evaluation for some activities that Örnsköldsvik was doing in order to prevent juvenile delinquency. So perhaps Lotta want to come?
Ja, hej. Lotta Westman heter jag, kommer från Örnsköldsviks kommun. Jobbar där som avdelningschef i välfärdsförvaltningen i en utvecklingsavdelning med interna administrativa stödtjänster. Bakgrunden till det här, Terese har ju precis dragit innehållet och syftet och målet med den här studien. Men jag ville bara säga några korta ord till varför vi startade det här arbetet. Och jag ska säga det också, det här är egentligen inte alls bara en välfärdsförvaltningens fråga i Örnsköldsvik, utan ett samarbete mellan oss, bildningsförvaltningen och kultur- och fritidsavdelningen. Så det är egentligen vi ansvariga ledningsfunktioner som har samarbetat. Men mina kollegor Maria och Sune kunde tyvärr inte vara med idag, så jag representerar hela Örnsköldsvik just i det här momentet. Det är precis som det står. Förebyggande arbete för att motverka destruktivt beteende hos unga. Situationsanalys och utvärdering av nuvarande åtgärder. Bakgrunden till det här, om det är någon i rummet som jobbar i socialtjänsten i allmänhet och kanske inom barn- och unga-området i synnerhet, så vet vi att det sker förändringar och det finns framgångsfaktorer i det arbetet, men det finns också en hel del utmaningar. 2017 märkte vi i slutet på det året att våra antal placerade barn och unga i HVB och familjehem ökade ganska kraftigt. Vi såg också att vi placerade barn i lägre åldrar på HVB-hem. Och vi började också upptäcka mer och mer en utmaning i vår kompetensförsörjning, främst då till socialsekreterare. Vi började på att fundera, hur ska vi göra för att komma till rätta, för att identifiera orsaker till att det här händer? Är det något vi har gjort? Är det någonting vi gör? Eller är det någonting vi ska göra i framtiden för att förebygga, helst förhindra, men också se till att vi har den bästa handläggningsprocessen och de bästa insatserna för den här målgruppen? Kort förklarat, vi visste att vi behövde arbeta tillsammans. Vi hade också ett uppdrag, elevhälsochefen, utvecklingschefen som är jag och kultur- och fritidschefen. Och vi behövde hitta en gemensam faktor för att kunna komma vidare i arbetet. Vi har ett ganska bra internt samarbete i kommunen med våran samordnare kopplat till just samverkansavtalet med Mittuniversitetet. Och det var på den vägen vi började och kom fram till det här ämnet. Kort förklarat så hamnade vi i 2 vägval under den här processen vi diskuterade tillsammans för att forma den här forskningsstudion. Vi kunde fortsätta på våran inslagna väg, våra befintliga arbetssätt, metoder, våran kompetens, våra insatser, både på öppenvårdssidan men också på placeringssidan. Det kan vi. Vi kan fortsätta att rekrytera socialsekreterare och vi kan bygga ut organisationen hur mycket som helst. Vi kan använda varenda resurs vi har för att göra det vi gör. Och vi vet också att med det så följer det en hel del obekväma dialoger kring ekonomi. Både med våra chefer och ledande funktioner, vår politiska styrning. Där vi ska förklara att barn- och unga-området, det är kostsamt och det ökar. Och jobbar ni i det området så känner ni säkert igen de här utmaningarna. Det var ju det ena. Kan vi göra? Eller så kan vi faktiskt ägna lite tid och resurser åt att börja fundera, vad är det som händer? Vad är de här orsakerna som gör den här ökningen av orosanmälningar, ansökningar, mer och mer komplexa behov hos den här målgruppen barn och unga? Och har vi rätt insatser? Är det vi gör rätt? Eller behöver vi göra på något annat sätt? Och hur skulle vi få tid och resurser till det här? Ja, genom det här samarbetet och samverkansavtalet med Mittuniversitetet så lyckades vi jobba fram den här studien som Terese nu ska få presentera och ha genomfört hos oss. Vi är oerhört stolta, glada, jättenöjda att vi har fått göra det här jobbet, och jag ser jättemycket fram emot din presentation, Teresa, både här idag men också hos oss uppe i Vik den 22 maj. Så tusen tack för det.
It was my pleasure. So when I start to communicate, the first communication that I had with the municipality was they called me asking, can you please try, or can you please help us try to understand what is happening with our kids? Why there is this increasing trend in the necessity of social work, the social services to place kids outside their homes, and a trend that it seems that each time the kids are younger and younger. So we propose on that moment, under this project 3 sub-projects. One of them will look specifically on the social services data. A second project will look at schools, so on the general population as we tell, to look at if there were dynamics in the municipality of interrelationship between the kids and their parents that might be causing some type of disruptive behavior. So parenting might be on the origin of certain disruptive behaviors on the kids. And also we intended to look at data from the Kultur and Fritids. Specifically, we wanted to ask to the professionals of Kultur and Fritids how they perceived the situation with the kids that they have under their activity. The Kultur and Fritids, unfortunately, was not possible to collect the data. The school, we collected data, we made all the ethical application, we had ethical approval, we tried to make a data collection, but was unsuccessful. We have less than 7% of parents and kids answering, so I'm not going to present to you because it's not representative, or we consider that it's not representative of what is happening, or might be or might not be. We don't know if it's representative or not, so I'm not going to tell about that data, but the data of the social services is so interesting. I already present this in a couple of conferences, and it's time that I present. The people are very interested, not only in Sweden, but also in other countries. So what I have seen in the social services here, and what is my critique in how I perceive what the data, how I analyze the data and what the data is telling me, it's not only a matter of Sweden, it's a matter of many other countries. I am trying to publish the data as fast as possible because it really generates very much interest. So what is this project about? What I did was to analyze the cases of 47 kids, and I analyzed their historic in the social services. So all the cases were granted were those kids that for the first time were granted or were receive a decision of out of home placement for the first time during 3 consecutive years. So the municipality blinded all the historic of the kids, the history of the kids to me. So I don't know who the kids are. I don't know who their parents are. All the historic is blind to me, and I analyzed that information. First, I had a kind of more typical quantitative type of analysis. What I was trying to see is what are the risk factors that are present in these histories. When I start to analyze, after I had 10, 12 cases analyzed, I find myself that I was losing a lot of information, that what I was that the data was much more richer than what I was achieving. So I put that work in the trash and I start from the beginning with a completely kind of blank mind. I went on an inductive approach and I look it through a specific type of theory that we called it family systems theory, just for kind of a general idea. What this looks is not only of the kid, but it's the kid in the interrelationships with the family, with the parents, with other kids in the home, with relatives that are outside the family, etc. And what we see is the dynamics of how this evolves in order to produce a kid that is going to have problems. I like to do the simile with an apple, and what I was looking is where the apple is starting to get rotten. It's get rotten by the inside, is the essential connections, attachment, and with the kid with the parents and the parents with the kid that is producing a problem here, or is the apple start to rotten also by the exterior in the relationships that the family has with the community and with the services that the community provides for them. So this is the framework of family systems theory. And what the other thing that I specifically looked at is the relationship, what we call the attachment that the kid have with the parents and parental investment. How much these parents are working in order to develop a kid that is with prosocial attitudes and etc. So I use this unit of analysis. The child is always put in the center of the analysis, and after we go slowly to see each one of the connections that there are on there with the different figures of this family. I needed also, in order to have a rationale why we was doing this, and I defend that what I see, it's the embryo of the criminal propensity. Some theoreticals in criminology talk about criminal propensity, and I collected with a student also auxiliary data from another municipality that is telling us this. That is telling us these kids are at a much major risk for reoffending. First, many of the kids, when they receive, what we looked at in this case was kids that receive for the first time a report or are requested from the social services about a report for a criminal offense. So we saw that in the whole sample that we had in a different municipality, 25% of the kids had been previously granted out-of-home placement, and those who were placed outside the home had a much higher risk to reoffend. So indeed, I can take this. This was done to certify me that I can tell and I can take this as the embryo of the, I know, I'm out of time, of criminal propensity. So just to very briefly give you a smell of what the results are, every kid, absolutely every kid, I found that they have some type of internalized problems. Internalized problems we tell about anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, these more type of psychological problems. Almost all the kids had this, or 100% of the kids I found some level of internalized problems. Regarding externalized problems that we tell is violence, delinquency, use of drugs and alcohol. On this case, I saw the whole spectrum. So there are kids that there is no indication that they have any type of antisocial kind of behavior, and there are kids that are already in their way to a criminal career. And what I found in terms of the family outcomes is I had to divide it in several clusters. And in base of this family systems theory that I told you before, I had to divide in what is the Swedish families and in what is foreign families and kids who come, mainly unaccompanied kids that were arriving to the municipality. The division between Swedish families and foreign families, mainly because the foreign families have a problem in the support and first the support that they have from the community. So what I found here is very isolated parents, and after I also found cultural shock. Two types of different cultural shock. First, the cultural shock of the family with the Swedish culture, and in another group of families, what I found is a cultural shock inside the same family. So our kids that are being raised in the Swedish society are kids that are looking at their peers in school and therefore have the same Swedish values, arriving to a home that has different values. So what I'm seeing is that conflict, of cultural conflict inside the family. Very interesting things that are on there. Just go very, very kind of briefly mainly on the highlights that I have. First, if we start to think, oh, these kids that are put outside the homes, it's because they have the parents, there is domestic violence, there is intimate partner violence, there is this type of problems. That was not what I saw. There was 2 clear cases of intimate partner violence. When was domestic violence in the home? It is not clear this type of pattern that we see of intimate terrorism or even reactive aggression. We have more high conflict that I would call high conflict, or that the theorics in intimate partner violence call situational couple violence, right? So there is not this imbalance of power, etc. So it's not clear what we might think that was generating a kid with problems. Regarding gender-based violence, if we put aside what is specifically honor-related violence, it is interesting because in this case was a mother with several children in the home, and was the mother and the siblings, the male siblings, producing violence towards 2 young females that were completely terrorized by the situation on the home. That was the specifically gender-related violence that I found. But many cases, what I found is parents completely exhausted by the situation that they are living. Mainly mothers, but also some fathers living in divorce situation or has a single parenthood with the responsibility of 1, 2, 3 kids sometimes, working in a double shift in order to get to the end of the month with enough resources, and sometimes with a kid that has some kind of psychiatric problem. So this was sometimes a mother saying, please take care of my kid because I cannot, I just cannot more. Also, I found that in this case, what I told previously about the shock of cultures, that there is the Swedish social services are calling corporal punishment, that is something that is accepted, not accepted, is a way of educating kids in other cultures. The social services are saying, this is domestic violence, this is violence against the kids are not safe at home, etc. But in some cases, these parents were very invested in the kids. So there are good attachment in the parents, and the parents were very invested. I would call it corporal punishment, not domestic violence in these cases. So it's a matter of reinterpretation, perhaps, what the situations that are on the family. And after, one of the things that I clearly saw on the data is that mainly in the Swedish families, these kids are very well known. They have been in and outside the system for a long time. So, and the system have tried to do many things, but were not able to stop these kids, to prevent these kids to be in place outside the home. So there is something on here that we are not doing correctly. And again, this is a critique not to Örnsköldsvik, not to the municipality, but to the whole system, and not only in this country, because I found this in other countries too.